Except if the LEA or the Regional Water Quality Control Board or the Regional Water Quality Control Board determine that the County of Mendocino is failing or is failed to perform its post-closure maintenance or corrective action as required by the law, then Section 6 of this agreement, Council, I'm practicing law here without the proper credentials, but this says that they can come in and order the auditor to give those funds whatever money is necessary to fulfill the requirements under the law.
Have we not fulfilled our requirements under the law?
No, but
Okay.
you know, we've done a very good job, but keep in mind, I'm going to say this in public. The agencies you're dealing with are extremely capricious, and you know, they could show up in Howard's office at any time, and these regulations are extremely complex. Anybody can walk over that knows these regulations well and go over any landfill site and start finding violations in the paperwork and in the way the sites are operated. So I would just caution the board to be careful in this area, because I'm sure we've had experience with OSHA inspectors. An OSHA inspector can show up in any shop and start finding problems. And a landfill inspector, in my experience, is very similar. So,
Well, I guess my response was, I have full faith and confidence in the staff to do the right thing, and if we're not, then we have other issues. But what I'm reading here is $286,000 is our legal commitment. That leaves us the balance between that and the 580 that we could do something with. And granted, I understand the risk of not fulfilling the commitment to our closure fund, and that is an amount we'll have to come up at some point in time. We were targeted to be completely funded. Our target was 2010. I misspoke earlier. It's 2010, 2011, not a year later. So that's only a couple of years away. So we're really close to that. Thank you.
Supervisor.
What is real clear is here in number 3 that we have to pledge $100,116 into an account for the 30-year period, and that accumulates, and that's supposed to accumulate, I guess, with interest and everything. That's real clear, which we're way ahead of the game on that, because this document was signed in, 2005, and we've got over $2 million in that account, so we've done well by putting over $100,000 into that account. So we're, I mean, I agree with the argument that we may be liable in the future for, I was just made aware of today that I was assuming that the Laytonville landfill fill was capped and done. I didn't realize we had to go back. I mean, I think we have a case with the engineer. If as Paul said, the sides are failing, I think we have a case with the engineer on that issue. But this is new to me today. But the issue of the number 4, the amount of the pledged revenue shall be equal to $186,250 for the known corrective action, which we deal with on an annual basis. Like Howard says, it has a lot to do with the rainfall and what that is. That varies. But my point is, this year's franchise revenues amounts to 7%. This previous board increased that from, I think, 4 to 7% here 2-3 years ago. It's a hefty increase, and it accumulates around $500,000 a year, I believe, right, in revenues. So if you even add that $186,000 on an annual basis and $100,000, that's roughly $286,000. So for what we're talking about here today, if we want to take, say, $100,000 or $150,000 out of that to close the gap in our budget, I don't think it would. It's not going to break the landfill closure account, or it's not going to give Howard the ability to take care of any corrective actions that happen in the year. I mean,
well, it's a policy decision the board will make in the C. I'd be remiss to say that I thought it was a good idea to not set aside this money for landfill closure. It needs to be there when we need it. So I've got to go on record saying that.
I concur, but this county, when you talk about all of the unfunded liability, we borrowed money to meet the unfunded retirement needs, and we've borrowed, there's all areas where we have what you would call unfunded liability, and it'd be nice to have savings accounts out there drawing interest every year to pay for this, but if you look, and I called the neighboring counties because my interest in this several months ago, and their post-closure plans, we're so much ahead of the game when it comes to our landfills of our neighboring counties. It's not funny. I mean, whether it's Sonoma County, Humboldt County, or Lake County, you look at that their plans, like I say, the Willits landfill closure, their closure states that if they have a problem with it, they'll cut the Douglas fir trees and sell the Douglas fir trees and pay for the problem. We all know there's not a Douglas fir market, but there was a good market back when they got approval of their post-closure plan. So, I mean, the post-closure plans in the state on landfills are all over the page. But not only has Mendocino County got a good post-closure plan, we're actually ahead of what we've committed to that by quite a bit.
To the CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an attempt to refocus the discussion a little bit, because this is about a final budget. I think earlier when we were looking at what our shortfall was, if the board's desire is to give approximately $50,000, 25 to 50,000 for EMS. I think if we take electronic agenda off the list here, I think what our net amount is, we're short about $50,000 for what we heard of for the board's requests. I can absolutely guarantee you, based on today's discussion and what our friends in the press publish as a result of this discussion, that